Hello and welcome, founders. Welcome back to Founderama. Hope you had a great weekend. A lot of founders didn't. It was quite a stressful last week, last few days of the week, and then again, quite a stressful kind of weekend. Lots of uncertainty, lots of fear, and I'm talking about SVB collapse, right? So Silicon Valley Bank. And this is, of course, for the benefit of startup founders that may not have been affected by that, and they're probably overseas, not in the U.S. and so on. But it's been a terrible kind of a situation. So in today's live episode, I wanted to talk about the risk associated with your funds, right? So if your funds are frozen, what do you do? Now, it's not a kind of a risk that you can easily account for, because who would imagine that a bank like SVB would collapse and that your funds would be frozen, right? It's something that I don't think any of the founders or the VC firms or anyone in the startup ecosystem ever imagined. Yes, of course, people who do risk management, risk profiling analysis, and things like risk analysts, they probably, one of the scenarios is what happens if the bank your money is in collapses, then what happens to the startup, right? So what happens to payroll, what happens to paying bills and things like that. But anyway, so the good news, at least for the moment, is that the US government has decided to step in and make whole the founders, kind of the funds, right? So at least that's the announcement they made, which means that founders will have access to their funds. I'm not really clear on when that's going to happen. I don't think. Well, I think you if you're a founder, I think you do have access today. But that's to be seen. I haven't been. I was actually on a lot of calls yesterday and even this morning with founders that I advise and founders that I facilitated their funding in the last few months, and whose funds were put into SVB, right? So I was on Zoom calls with them, and I've been trying to find if in case this doesn't go as planned. So if, for example, whatever the government has promised, if that does not happen, or it does not happen quickly enough, because look, the biggest issue here is payroll that's coming up, right? This week, people have to get paid. What happens? How are the teams gonna get paid? That is the biggest burning question, right? So what about cash flow? Anyway, so what I thought I would do is, rather than go into an analysis of why SVB collapsed, and you can Google that, I wanted to talk about it from a risk mitigation, founders, startup planning situation, right? How do you navigate something like this? And I wanted to go through some strategies, some tips, and if something like this happens again, or even right now, what would you have to do? What are the steps to protect yourself, to protect your team members, to make sure that your startup does not collapse, and that you come out on top of the situation. All right, so let's jump straight in. Right, today's live episode, the topic is actually, when your funding is frozen, how to navigate the SVB collapse, right? What do you do? Okay, so yeah, initially, I was going to talk a lot more about the dire consequences and all that, but I thought, okay, if let's trust that what the US government has promised will go through. It's already probably going through, but let's do this. So SVB collapse, the danger of hidden risks. These are hidden risks, right? So yeah, we've already spoken about the SVB collapse and the latest news. Now, how is this a hidden risk, right? Now, when you have a startup and you have some funding, and you've already hired people. You're doing business as usual, right? There are some risks associated with the startup that are not so hidden. Now, this is the things that I usually talk about, right? So this is your team, your go-to-market strategy, your software development, if it's a SaaS product, or acquiring customers, the cost of acquiring customers, profitability, pumping back, all these things. These are risks that are obvious. But what about risks like this? Your bank collapsing, or of course, like 2008, massive bubble burst, or again, it's funny that the CEO of Lehman Brothers, the ex-CEO of Lehman Brothers, was the CEO of SVB. I mean, this is, you cannot script this. You cannot. This is. Anyway, back to the topic on hand. So, thinking about hidden risks should be a fundamental trait of a startup founder, right? So it's not enough just to think about your immediate kind of risks, those associated with your startups, those that you can see, those that you can plan for. You got to also think outside your ecosystem. This is yesterday, I think. No, it was yesterday or Saturday. I posted something on LinkedIn, on Twitter, an image. It's a quote by Charlie Munger, and I will paraphrase it. He says, "All I want to know is the place where I'm going to die, because I will never go to that place." And I love that quote because it really talks to this concept of these elements of danger for your business, for your startup, right? So what Charlie is saying is that if he knew, for example, that he would die, I don't know, in New York, right? He would never go to New York and therefore never die. And, so it's a funny thing, but it's so poignant. And that applies here because, look, you got to sit down and think through all the different things that can destroy your business, right? Your startup. And when you're doing that list, you got to think outside the box. You got to think, what else? What else? Of course, catastrophic failures, earthquakes, war. Yes. What about a collapse of a system that is not related to yours? What kind of effects would it have? So on and so forth. So anyway, these are hidden risks. And typically, founders cannot account for this. But can they? Right? So if you ask a founder, typically right now the answer would be, how the hell would I have known this would happen, right? And how could I have prevented this? Or how could I? We'll talk about that. We'll get to that. There are things you can do. And this is about the bottlenecks of your startup. What are the weakest links? You got to look at your startup as a series of links in a chain, right? And you got to inspect each link. So, okay. So just a quick thing I want to touch upon. I won't go too much in detail because I'm sure other people are writing about these. But this SVB collapse, I think it's going to have a far-reaching effect into the startup ecosystem, right? All the way from VCs, and a lot of VCs had their money tied up, of course, in SVP, and so all the way from funding, securing funding, to fund dispersal, all that. So it's time to really think about this, and maybe not right now, but once you've faced the challenges of Payroll and made the Payroll and all that. Okay, so let's jump into some strategies and some ideas on how you can mitigate these kinds of risks. And also right now, what do you do if you're a founder and let's say, you can only access a certain portion, or you can't access your funds before your Payroll is up. Maybe your Payroll, your mid-month Payroll is already today. I don't know, maybe it's on Wednesday. Okay, so let's talk about that. First of all, you gotta start with assessing cash flow, right? The first step in navigating the funding freeze is to assess your cash flow situation. You got to build an internal team whose goal is to extend cash and survive until April, right? So the next couple of weeks, very important. If you get access to your funding today, this week, okay. But let's suppose that it takes a little while. What do? You got to look at cash flow. And what that means is that you got to use modeling tools to create scenarios and determine the impact of various cost cutting measures on your cash flow and runway. So first of all, you need to project your cash flow. Okay, what cash do you have? What are the options? Maybe credit cards, maybe, and we'll talk about some of the other kind of things you can do in case you cannot access your cash for, God forbid, next month. Let's say till the end of April, for instance. That's going to be a disaster. So be sure to consider the impact of your decisions on employee morale and the long-term prospects of the business, right? Open another bank account to help you manage your cash flow more effectively. Okay, so cash flow right now is very important. So you got to model that out and create scenarios. Now, when you create these scenarios, then you can look at things that maybe can be cut out or deferred. So maybe there's a bill coming up this week that can be pushed to end of the month, maybe next month. So this modeling will give you the opportunity to identify the opportunities and the costs, right? The opportunities and the obstacles. Your biggest obstacle would be your payroll. Your teams have to be paid. That is it. That is the bottom line, right? So to make that happen, you can then look at things like, where can I cut costs? Maybe this week you had an ad campaign that's going out that you're paying. Maybe you're supposed to pay today. Maybe you're supposed to pay in the contract. And this is obvious, of course. You're not going to pay. I know that. But I'm trying to do a thorough kind of analysis of this. So cut that out. Now, if you think that maybe your payroll, okay, let's say you have access to, I don't know, $50,000 in cash in a different account that was set up for marketing, whatever. Maybe you can route those funds in and pay your team. Maybe you can ask your teams to take 50%, deferred payment. So that at least the basics are met and they can pay their basic bills and stuff like that and all that. So yeah, assessing cash flow, very important. Next, prioritizing payroll. Your team is the lifeblood of the company and it's crucial that you prioritize making payroll. Explore alternate funding options such as venture debt or bridge financing to bridge the gap until your deposits are released, right? Consider non-financial incentives to keep your team motivated, such as flexible work arrangements or professional development opportunities. Okay, what that means is that, first of all, think of alternate funding options. You know what? Let me put all the points on here, and then I can talk about each. So, alternate funding options. This could be venture debt or bridge financing. Now, if you can get a bridge loan, and now lots and lots of other banks and other companies within the credit ecosystem, they're waking up. They're trying to do their bit, and I think you will find it easier to get some bridge financing just to make the payroll, so that as soon as your funds are released, you then can pay off the debt. Venture debt also is another way. If you can leverage, if you can go back to the VC or whoever, the angel investor, whoever has funded you, and ask for a loan, right? So there's no equity here, but rather as a bridge loan to say, and the VCs and the angel investors, they have everything to lose here too, right? Their investment in your company, if you don't make payroll and or you have to lay off your team members, it's going to affect your startup. It's going to affect the trajectory of the profitability and the whole thing. It's going to affect. So they might be willing to come forward, take a little bit of risk here, and say, all right, what do you want? Okay, so $200,000 I need right now to make payroll. So maybe that could be at favorable terms and all that. So during this time, your teams are going to be in a really worried state, right? So they're coming to work. They don't know if their parole would be met. Government says so, which is good, and there's no need to doubt them. Okay, at the moment at least. I know you're smiling there, but so in the meanwhile, motivate your team members, right? And I'm going to talk about communication in the next slide, but motivate them. Look, be transparent with your team and investors about your decisions and the steps you're taking to address the funding freeze. This is very important, right? Let them know your fears, of course, but also what you're doing to mitigate this. This is very critical. Um, that's communicating, of course. Next, build out your toolkit, right? Once you've assessed your risk, it is important to build your toolkit for mitigating funding crises. Now, this may include exploring alternate funding options. Again, this is, invoice factoring and asset-based lend. I'm not going to go into all those details. This is just a summary, right? So I want you as a founder to be proactive and to look at the options you have. It may also include developing relationship with multiple banks and financial institutions to ensure you have access to funds in the event of a freeze. So I always advocate, and believe me or not, I always advocate splitting. And I personally, I do that. I have several different bank accounts, each of my companies. In fact, when we decide on a marketing campaign, we have a separate account for marketing funds, right? So it's in a different bank. Initially, actually, I did this not because of some kind of genius, but ages ago. So I had a startup, and we had a massive situation. Okay, so one of my businesses actually, it was affected by Google, and overnight we went from making $1 million to making $0, right? Well, when I say overnight, of course, the traffic fell off a cliff, and so revenue was affected immediately. But we had some funds in the bank, and all that, and it took 8 months for the funds to run out, and then that's a different story, and maybe I'll do that, and how I brought it back again and made our first $1 million again, the first after the crisis. Anyway, the point here is, so at that time, we had our funds, and we were trying to market, and the marketing agency had they were banking with a different, and we were wiring them the money, and it was taking time. And by the time it reached them and blah, blah, those guys were really, really strict with this. They would only do work once the money hits the account. And even though we knew them for long. So at that time, I simply said to my partner, I said, you know what, to hell with it. Let's just open an account in the same bank as these guys. Put some money into that account so that this is it, right? So it's the same day payment, and these guys would have to, get their act together. Now they're blaming us every time for delays because, so anyway, so that I found was very easy. It also reduced the wiring fees, and it had some benefits to it. So from then on, we would have different bank accounts and would put funds in them, and all that. So I think that is right now, yes, whatever happens with this, startup founders, always never put all your funds into one account. Let's say you got $1 million funding. Of course, it will come in one, let's say it's coming in one payment from your investor. It would go to one account, of course. But as soon as it hits your account, split it up, right? Mitigate the risk. 250 in one, 250 in another, 250 in another, 250 in the fourth bank. 4 banks, right? And so on. Okay. It may include building a crisis management plan and a team that is prepared to act quickly and strategically in the event of a funding crisis. Now, funding crises doesn't necessarily mean the bank has collapsed. It could be something like a global level event, right? Extension level event. It could be a pandemic. It could be anything, right? So you need to have crisis management plan, and you need to do that when things are good, not during a crisis. Right now, of course, if you don't have any of the option, sit down right now, come up with a crisis management plan. And if you're stuck, if you're kind of like, you have no ideas, then reach out to advisors and other founders and so on and so forth, right? Okay, communicating with team and investors. This is a big one. Right now, what you need to be doing, be transparent and clear with your communication. And you got to maintain the trust and confidence during these times of uncertainty. And believe me, not only as a startup advisor, not only as an angel investor, not only me as someone who is, invested in over 20 ventures and 4 different exits, and I actually run real businesses, right? So I'm not one of those advisors that has never built anything and, no. Right now, while I'm talking about this, I have a branding business, an agency that is doing really well. And, and it's got teams, it's got payroll, it's got everything. And I've got another business that, that is real business. So look, there was a time 8 years ago, and like I said, I'll share that story another day, but I had to fire 50 people in the span of a week, right? And that was the worst time of my life. These guys, these team members, the guys and girls were family members, right? We worked together for over 10 years, some of them. And so the things that I learned during that bleak time, and then over the years, working with founders, working with startups, launching them. And the biggest thing is transparency in communication, maintaining the trust. Because when something like this happens and the founder is quiet, or yes, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to not know, but communicate that, right? Communicate that you don't know and that you're trying to find solutions, or you're trying to do this, you're trying to do that, right? So send a company-wide memo briefing them on the situation, of course, and put a calendar invite. Okay, Monday a.m., all hands. It's already Monday morning. Do this Monday evening, whatever, right? Get everybody in. In fact, have a stream, conscious stream on Twitter. Keep just whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're hearing. Guys, I just heard this. Guys, I thought this, but no. Guys, keep communicating. Okay, look, if you're busy, I can imagine, as a founder, you got a lot on your plate right now, especially with the situation going on. So you may not be able to tweet. Get someone in your team to do that on your behalf. So you just tell them, they tweet or they post or whatever, right? Or send out an email, so on. Seek advice from trusted advisors or experienced entrepreneurs who can guide you through the process of communicating effectively during a crisis. And this is not just for this crisis, right? That's why it's always good to build relationships with other, entrepreneurs or experienced founders, advisors, mentors. Look, it's always good to have, it's two better than one, right? Look, if you have a co-founder, again, members of your team, they're already in the same boat as you. So they may not be able to elevate themselves to advise you. So it's always good to seek out outside advice. For instance, Saturday, I was advising founders that I worked with in the past. They reached out to me, and I may not have the solution, but what I did manage to do was quickly reach out to family offices that I work with, the syndicate, the angel investors, just so that we have an option. And I was like, guys, if this is not sorted by the U.S. government, or something happens, and that these founders, especially the founders that I work with, if they don't make payroll, can you guys kind of maybe step in the interim? Okay, now of course they can't say yes or no straight away, but at least I've begun the dialogue. And then I get back to my founders and I say, listen guys, I've spoken to them, blah, blah. And then I kept, getting back to them and updating them on what the situation was. So you need advice. Yeah. Okay, so be transparent with your team and investors about your decisions and the steps you're taking to address them during the funding freeze. So it's very important. I cannot emphasize enough. All right. Quickly, let's move on to the next one. Avoiding panic and rash decisions. Okay, Now, again, this is for in case the funding freeze takes longer than is good for you, or something else happens, or you cannot access your funds, so on and so forth. This slide is important to you. It's important to remain calm, focused, and strategic during times of uncertainty, right? Now, I've been through my fair share of recessions and the 2008 bubble burst. In fact, going back 2000, the biggest burst at that time. I was in that. I went through that. 2008, 2012, again, last year. And the 2012 one, in fact, that's the one when one of my businesses almost went bankrupt. Almost. It did not go bankrupt. It almost went bankrupt. And that was when I had to fire 50 people. But then again, yeah, within a year, I started, I came back rising from the ashes. I hired back within the next year or so, over 70% or something like that. I hired back. Then, we met. So what I've realized was it wasn't even strategic thinking. Yeah, strategy, yes, but it was being calm and focused, right? That is what helped me. In fact, that was the time when I, started, my meditation. I was already doing meditation, but I went beyond and meditation and all that. But okay, build a detailed list of every outstanding purchase order and accounts payable item and rate them as must pay to survive or other, do not pay the other, right? At least not now. Yeah, this is very important. This will allow you not to make panicked or rash decisions. And you know what? There might be vendors that will put you under pressure now because they know and they feel it's risky. And you know what? Yeah, we're not judging them. They got a business to run. They need cash flow themselves. But talk to them, right? Use mindfulness and other stress reduction techniques to help you stay grounded and avoid panic or rash decisions, right? So it's very important that you be mindful. You're present. You are looking at the situation as it is, but not just worried about tomorrow. Tomorrow will come when it comes. Okay, think of it like this. Is tomorrow now? It isn't, right? Is the end of the week now? It isn't. Now is now. And look, if someone comes from the future and says on Friday, right, this is going to happen, which is going to destroy you. Something is going to happen. Now, today is Monday. Yes, Friday it will happen. There's nothing you can do about it. But right now, in this moment, it hasn't happened yet, right? And you're not going to get to Friday because Friday is when you get to Friday, right? Or when it is Friday, it is that moment. It's not the future. Do you see what I'm trying to say? And maybe I'll do another live episode about this particular topic because this is very important. Trust me. It may sound like mumbo jumbo and, philosophical or spiritual. No, this is important. I've used this strategy, this technique to dig myself out of so many different crises and not let it affect my mind so that I am actually more effective. So take each minute as it is. You're in this minute and you're okay. Your startup is okay, right? And your teams, they're okay in this minute. Don't panic about that. So mindfulness, that is important. Live in this moment right now. Be prepared to adapt your strategy as external factors such as market conditions or regulatory changes shift. Now, this is not just about now, this is also for your future. You got to adapt your strategy, right? Seek advice and support from trusted advisors and experienced entrepreneurs who have faced similar challenges in the past. So as not to make rash decisions, you need to run everything now. Every decision that you're going to make now, run it through your partner, run it through trusted team members. If you have an advisor that you can reach out to or a friend who has been there, done that, or, just run it through them. Right now, ask me questions, DM me on LinkedIn, hit me up on Twitter. And no, I'm not trying to sell my services here. That's not what I'm trying to do, okay? DM me if there's a decision that you're making about your startup based on this. Now, if you get your funding released, forget this. Yeah, this. That's why it's a live episode. I might actually just delete it later on if none of this comes to fruition. But if it does, if it's taking longer and you have a decision to make and you're thinking maybe quickly, maybe I should fire these interns or this set of people so that I run it to someone, right? DM me. I may not be able to advise you. I may simply not get back to you, but at least reach out. Okay. And the final thing is you got to stay resilient, right? It's important to stay resilient in the face of funding crises and other unexpected events. As a startup founder, this is not going to be, if you're just starting out, and if you're already a seasoned founder, you know, right? This is not the first or the last. You're going to have more. You're going to have more crises. In fact, the biggest job of a founder is to manage crises, little and big. Of course, this is a big crisis. This is extinction level event, as someone called it, right? But you have crisis every day, and you're managing crisis, and that is what a startup founder is, right? That is what a business person is. That is what is an entrepreneur, managing, mitigating crisis and risk and things like that. Practice mindfulness. Yeah, I've already told you this, right? Seek advice again. I know I'm repeating because these are important, right? And remember, with the right tools and stuff, with the right mindset, you can overcome this, right? You can overcome this, and it's very important that you overcome. Now, let me quickly look and see if there's any comments, questions on this topic. Not much, because I can imagine it's not a topic for everyone. It's only interesting if you have been affected, and it's going to get, if the U.S. government takes time or if they don't solve it quickly, then yes, there's potential for this to really really turn into a shit show. Okay, so that's it for this live episode. It's half an hour. I'm done. If you're struggling with the current situation, then you know what? Stay calm, stay focused, stay resilient. Think of only this minute, the decisions that you need to make, the problem you need to solve this minute, not what's going to happen tomorrow, not even what's going to happen this evening, this afternoon, right? Because tomorrow doesn't exist. Friday doesn't exist. And you do know that they're not set in stone. The future is not set in stone, right? The future changes. It's constantly changing based on what's happening this minute, right? Your decisions change your future. I don't know if you watched that movie, Sliding Doors. I love that movie, and it's a movie where there's this I don't know who that actress was, but her life is split into two. So she comes up to this train, and the doors close, and then it's split into two. In one version of reality, the doors did not close, so she got on to the train, and then life continues. And in the other version of reality, the doors closed and she could not get onto that train. So then they show you what happens to life had she got on the train, and what happens to life because she did not get on the train. Just like that, the outcome of your startup, the success of life, what happens to you, your loved ones, it's not set in stone. That's why you got to be careful with the decisions you make, because the decisions you make now, in this moment, affect that so-called future, right? Affect what might happen. But always remember this. Whatever happens in the future, whatever you think happens in the future, actually happens in the moment, right? So, lunch at 1 p.m. this Friday, your lunch is a future activity, right? It's a future event. But when you eat that lunch, it's going to be in that moment. So every time, there's no future. It's always the moment. It's only a trick that our mind plays, the human mind plays, because of our intelligence, because of the way we're able to extrapolate, time and understand time and utilize it. But it's just an illusion. Future is an illusion. So don't panic. Don't worry. Just be calm, be resilient, and so on. And like I said, if you have any questions, please do reach out to me, right? And I'll try and answer them. Hit me up on Twitter, Bunigala. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Again, Mash Bunigala, search for me and DM me. And, hopefully everything will be okay and we'll all be sighing relief in the next few days. But yeah, let's see how it goes. All right. So till tomorrow, I'll come back same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think that's 2:30 GMT, UTC. Tomorrow, I'll be talking about something else. I don't want to talk about SVB anymore, unless, of course, something drastic happens. Tomorrow, I'll pick another topic. And so till tomorrow, go forth and prosper. And again, tomorrow doesn't exist. The video I'm going to do tomorrow, the live I'm going to do tomorrow is not set in stone. I can change my mind, change the topic. All right. Take care.